NSFW, people of Reddit, what was the most gross and NSFW thing you ever saw IRL? Cleaning hospitals, it's hard to choose. There was patient who was constipated for a week and gave birth to a shitty the size of a football. In the toilet I had to chop off small pieces with a paint stirrer, where's the poop knife when you need it, and cordon off the rest of the mass to the side with a plunger, so the small bits could flush without pulling the brown behemoth in along with it and reclogging things. Took 6 cycles of chop plus flush before the big guy would go down. Perhaps more disturbing was while cleaning the urgent care unit. I was restocking some paper towels and the patient was alone in the room. Did not look good at all. Sweaty, red-faced and labored breathing. I told him I'd get a nurse and a cup of water for him. Tried to get a nurse and no one could be bothered. So I get the water and go back in. This guy had vomited massive amounts of blood plus miscellaneous chunks all over his front side. Hit the code blue button and took off before I added to the pile on the floor. Turns out he had an internal bleed in his esophagus and had been swallowing blood for hours. He survived though. Reading the first paragraph, I could smell shitty. You make it sound like your family doesn't have a poo knife. Originally from NYC, on the subway I once saw a homeless woman crouching with her bare prolapsed anus hanging on the ground. Bro, that's ducking gross. I think in middle school everyone would try to gross each other out with pictures from the internet and someone showed me what that looks like. I can say the internet has scarred me for life hundreds of times. The tea made my skin crawl and I made sure to stay at least 10 feet away as I walked past her. But I can honestly say since it's NYC, a lot of people have probably seen worse than that. I regret every decision I've made in life that led to me reading this. Homeless woman squatting in the parking lot of a Walmart changing a tampon while taking a shitty. It's Walmart, man shrugging. Days in Myrtle Beach, SC, went down to the pool only to see 2 extremely hairy fat guys having anal sex in the jacuzzi. It appears alcohol and diarrhea was involved. We checked out and got a room at the Super 8. I hate Myrtle Beach. Walked in on a upper management worker giving an intern a blowjob in the secret clean restroom at work. The upper management worker was a married man with 3 kids. Looks like someone's getting a raise. You're damn right I did. And a promotion 8 years later I'm still with the same company and these dummies keep promoting me. Oddly enough, Ole Georgiaka is now head of HR. When I was in high school, I went to the restroom, did my business and went to wash my hands. When I looked in the mirror I saw a disabled kid in an open stall with his pants down and shit smeared all over the walls and he started laughing. I turned cold and felt disgust. I speed walked out of there in about 3 seconds. It haunts me to this day. A couple of years ago, 2017 to 2018, me and my family were visiting a friend of my dad's. For context, while the guy is tidy and well organized, he pulls long hours at work and gets too tired to do much. His wife, on the other hand, is a stay-at-home mum who's always well groomed, but unfortunately she's the type that's really messy and never, ever cleans up around the house. Anyway, at some point, I needed to use the bathroom. Thankfully, the toilet was clean. While sitting there and peeing, I'm a girl, I noticed that a hand towel had fallen on the floor. I went to pick it up and stopped dead in my tracks. I have no idea how long that towel had been left there, but apparently, it was long enough that it had ducking mushrooms growing out of it. Needless to say, I never visited their house again. Watched a man in Rio get hit by a car that was going incredibly fast. Fully on the brakes, he was over a block away after the accident. I honestly thought the pedestrian just vanished. Most of him had cleared a good 15 meters onto the sidewalk, but his shin and foot flew a lot further. He dies right. When I was 12 walking home I saw a crack whore blowing a 300 lb plus guy in the woods. This made me laugh and wanting to throw up when I imagined it. That's a vivid imagination you have. Walking with some friends to find a local pho joint and saw a man standing bent over at the waist, pants around his ankles, shitting on the sidewalk. He was unfortunately also facing away from us. I'm not clear how he wasn't also shitting on his own ho-ho-hos and pants, since he wasn't squatting, but I suspect this was not a major concern of his at the time. I was no longer hungry but went anyway, and the pho was stellar. Adapt, improvise, overcome. Lot of homeless people stuff in this thread. Everyone does gross shitty. Homeless people just don't have the luxury of doing it in private. Standing outside a hotel on 42nd Street and could not figure out what that horrible smell was. Then I saw the paramedics take a homeless man in a wheelchair into the ambulance. His leg was gangrenous. Cut my arm open on a chain link fence while riding a bike. It sliced it open pretty wide and I could see inside my forearm. It looked weirdly like oatmeal with a pool of blood as the milk. Wouldn't care to ever see that again. In high school, me and my mates loved Skyrim. We would each take turns having everyone over at their house, and almost every weekend or on the holidays, and we would all set up our PCs or consoles, drink a shitload and smoke a bunch of weed. On this one occasion, one of the guys brought a massive container full of magic mushrooms. Me, my friend, I, and my friend Jay jumped a fence because we wanted to run around with the goats. Jay cut himself on the fence on a loose nail. After becoming one with the goats, he was bleeding quite a bit and was beginning to panic. I was convinced if Jay was to take some goat tea and rub it in his wounds, the Goat King would grant him healing, and it's safe to say at the time he had us pretty convinced. Jay was ready to undergo the ritual of health, so I had gone and picked up a huge pile of goat tea and started to talk complete bullshit in a chanting matter. The smell must have hit Jay or something, because as soon as I was close to him with the huge pile of tea, Jay unleashed a huge fury of projectile vomit that had me incapacitated with laughter. What the actual duck? Incapacitated bone at the teeth. Started training a new guy last week. Saw him pick his nose and eat it the first day, then pick his ear, check it, and eat that the next. Dude's DCK so encrusted with waters really resembled a payday bar. My great grandpa fell in the shower. I saw his DCK. Bruh. You should have get him on his feet by grabbing his DCK up. The old dick twist. Fernie's gangrene. It basically liquefied the tissue to the point where debridement required nothing more than a tongue depressor, or the PT with untreated diabetes and necrotizing fasciitis that was so widespread, all of the skin from his knees to his nipple line had to be removed over the course of dozens of surgeries. Who or the 400 plus lb woman who had not moved out of bed in 4 years and needed a Foley prior to bowel surgery? Took 2 people to hold the legs and excess God now sweat out of the way, and one very brave, hopefully nosoblind nurse to insert the Foley amongst a stench that would gag a maggot. I saw a somewhat large girl sucking off a somewhat large guy in a public park with people watching. The gross part about it was that she couldn't even get me to finish. Hold up. Yep, I'm saving this and coming back later. IDK if these count, but gory things are grosser to me than fat hairy people and pee-pee poo-poo stuff. 1. The remains of a poor kid who had jumped off the roof of my apartment block. Not a nice thing to see on your way to school. 2. The lower half of an elderly woman who had been run over by one of those machines that flatten concrete. I didn't see any blood or gore, but her legs were flat. Probably a kneecap that dislocated and had managed to wrap its way around to the wrong side of the knee. I can tell you that was not fun to look at. Not me personally, but a former co-worker of mine volunteered as an emergency response worker. They arrived at the scene of an accident and were making sure everyone was okay when she noticed a man sitting off by himself on the edge of a curb with his head in his hands. She went over to see how he was doing, touched his shoulder, and he immediately slumped over with brains pouring out of a cracked opening in his skull she'd been unable to see. He'd apparently sat down there, holding his head together by hand, and died without moving or anyone noticing. She threw up on the spot. Was taking the train and thought I was the only one in that particular train car. Heard some noises, moaning, looked over to the right of me and saw a couple going at it at the end of the car, liquor bottle on the ground next to them. It was midday and they were having sloppy drunken sex on public transit. Awkward as hell for me. That's when you assert dominance and join in, and duck them both. I looked at a mirror once. Common situation.